I'm going to call our public hearing of City Council for Monday, September 9th, 2024 to order. First order of business is 2, corporate officer to read aloud the notice of public hearing. 2.1, notice of public hearing regarding proposed zoning amendment 24-02 bylaw number 4589, 2024.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a public hearing today to hear from individuals who may be impacted by the proposed changes to the city's zoning bylaw. Zoning Amendment 24-02 Bylaw 4589-2024 includes the addition of community care facility and commercial daycare as principal uses and accessory dwelling unit and secondary suite as accessory uses. The amendment also involves revising the maximum height of principal buildings and structures from the lesser of 10.5 meters or 2 stories to the lesser of 16 meters or 3 stories. Furthermore, the amendment proposes to allow secondary suites within duplexes, triplexes, and townhouses in the CD1 zone with 1 accessory dwelling unit permitted per duplex unit. Since the first and second readings of the bylaw, referrals have been mailed to affected agencies. Public notice was published on the city website and social media platforms in compliance with the timelines of the Local Government Act. We received 1 comment from the Peace River Regional District, and staff has placed that on your desk for review. The summary of the comment was that the city take into consideration the Ministry of Agriculture's guide to edge planning to help mitigate potential agriculture and non-agriculture conflicts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just add one thing too. I also had a comment from a resident just on this zoning bylaw, and it was on the height restrictions, going from 10 to 16 meters, just because I think before it was at 10 for visual, for views really. And then this is something that came down from the provincial government, correct? This zoning, changing from a 2-story to 3-story.
So through your worship, yes, there was the changes with the provincial legislation, which required us to change our zoning and OCPs, and just the timing of, there was a previous amendment that was in the works when that occurred, so basically we had to restart and go through this. And really what's being requested here is what's being has been brought forth by the provincial government to allow for secondary suites, additional units, and whatnot.
Just to clarify, there's no option. That's what we have to follow.
I'll look to Devin just as far as on the height. There probably certainly is. That wasn't, I believe, mandated by the province. It's more on the density side, is specifically around the height. So, I mean, from a height concern, that's something you can consider if you don't want to increase the maximum heights. Yeah.
Okay. And that would be something, if we wanted to consider that now, we could discuss that. Okay.
Yeah.
So would we need to get the recommendation on the floor first to have that discussion? Okay. So I guess I'll just bring it to council that I did hear from a resident that lives down there, and originally when that plan to develop that area was brought to those residents, it was talked about just being 2 stories because they were worried about losing their views and just having that high density right behind their homes. So it is a concern from a resident down there. I don't know how many other residents down there, because I'm sure they weren't consulted door to door. This was just one that read it. So, yeah. So I guess it's something to consider. Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Worship. So in curiosity then, what brought forth the desire to go from the 10 meters to the 16? The 2 to the 3?
Devin?
I can speak to that. So through your worship, so the desire to go from the 2 to 3 stories, it is part of the SMA requirements that the developer saw and wanted to make those changes. But it was always in their plan, I believe, when you look at their neighborhood concept plan that they have provided and drafted for us. It showed the commercial daycare. It showed those higher densities around the outside that are closer to like the transit and things like that. So I believe the SMA requirements from the province, while the height is a recommendation, it's not a mandate that we have to go to. I think it was 11 meters. It wasn't far off. The 16 is part of the comprehensive development plan.
So is there an opportunity to limit the amount of buildings there that could go to that height? Could we say, only 20% of the development can go that height and we could keep the rest of it at the 10 meter or the 2-story?
So through your worship, I believe so. I would assume that the developer is looking for this, as Devin indicated, to try and meet the requirements and to increase. In order to achieve the density they're looking for, they need to go vertical.
Right.
To fit it onto the parcels. So it's definitely something that could look at, could take back to them, suggest that if it's a concern of council's.
Well, just in what the mayor was saying, a resident's concerns about their view, which is a legitimate concern, but if we can limit how much of that space goes up, right? Just a thought.
Yeah. Like, I guess to add to what Councillor McDonald said, is it possible, like, if it was even just the row behind those residents that are currently there, like, that would not be allowed to go 3 stories, so it doesn't impact them? Because I'm assuming their concern is a 3-story apartment building getting built right behind their yard, which would be, which would make sense. So if that was further up in the development, or is that laid out in the whole? I haven't seen the development plan.
So through your worship, on the map, so now I'm assuming the concern that has been brought forward has come from somebody that lives on 116th.
Correct.
So behind those homes are single family and are not part of this particular zoning. So
Okay.
this is already set back, 2 rows of housings and a street. So it is set back quite a ways from 116th
Okay.
homes for the most part. I guess I should qualify, but there is a small section on between 16th and 17th. I do apologize. Between 16th and 17th row of homes, it's probably 7 or 8 homes that this would abut up behind them. So, but the majority of it has already been set back.
Sorry, so 7 or 8 homes that it is. Right
Yeah,
behind.
on the west side between 16th and 17th Street. So,
That would be right where that resident is that spoke to me, probably.
yeah, and maybe that's, so I'm just pulling up the map here. So in your package, you'd be able to see the map, the outline of the,
Yeah, I can see the map. It's just really small on.
yeah.
Okay. Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Worship. So looking at that map, I see it's delineated into 4 sections there. Is that 4 phases that they plan on doing of development?
That's just how the properties are broke out. Those are 4 individual properties,
Oh,
just how it's
Okay.
titled. Yeah.
so we could say that most northern one there, call it phase 1, we'll say, or the property 1, we could say 2 stories there, and then the properties 2, 3, and 4 being the 3.
So, your worship, you could. It would, yeah, that's certainly a possibility. Without talking to the developer, my inkling would be that they are looking for the density
Immediately.
earlier to make it
Right.
feasible, but that's up to council.
My other thought, too, I know it wasn't discussed about elevators, but is there a building bylaw against elevators in Dawson Creek? Anything over 2 stories needs to have an elevator in it, and has that changed because of this? Or are you familiar?
I'm not certain, Your Worship, what the building code requires when it's probably on a particular size of building, number of floors.
Okay, but that hasn't been changed in the new, no?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Well, the map I'm looking at I know that if I was a resident there, I would be annoyed at my view being blocked for sure. A three-story building would certainly block out the vista if I lived there. So I don't know if I'm at all comfortable with that height. But again, my map, is there just one map with this?
I got some like high density pictures of the home, like
Yeah,
potential, but I'm not.
So in your package, if you look at the 2.1 and the first item under 2.1, which is notice of public hearing.
Yeah. Maybe I'm in.
And that map, it's a one-page document.
Yeah.
Has that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Excuse me a minute. I was just looking at a map. Now I can't find it.
It's on right here, Council President.
That's the one.
map,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So they got on that map, then Kevin, it's got 117th, obviously, which is the new proposed street.
117th exists.
Oh,
That
It's
that
just
is already
the-
exists
oh,
on that
that's what
map.
part
Yeah,
of
those
that
homes there. Yeah.
development is?
Yep.
That exists. And so the phase one of the construction relative to that 117th is west of it, right?
Yeah.
Assumably, yeah. That would
Yeah.
be up to the developer, but that would make sense because they would tie into the existing infrastructure.
Right. So I would rather that not happen from the height stuff. I mean, I think if I lived there, it would certainly be a very negative thing for me. So I don't know anybody there. Nobody's spoken to me. I'm just speaking from the point of view of the rest of that whole area is two-story buildings, right? Or single-story.
Okay. You good?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Parslow. Councillor Earl? Councillor Earl's,
Thank you, Your Worship. So just,
Yeah.
it's been a while since we've conversed about this particular initiative, and I'm trying to jog my memory on one or two things. So there are, I know when we look at, the per capita costs for providing services to a property, single detached homes are kind of I guess we allocate resources to kind of break even. They're not that we're in the business of making money, but they're certainly not money makers for us. We're basically, snow removal, maintenance, all that stuff is just to break even. And then the areas where we have an opportunity to decrease those costs have to do with increasing density, right, on a per capita basis. The more people living in an area, the less it costs per capita to provide those services. And I'm trying to think back. I know one of the considerations in pursuing an area where you had multifamily units and higher density options had to do with, number one, a recognition of the students and international students coming into the community and where are they going to live in close proximity to the college. And then obviously the potential for childcare and seniors care and things like that as part of this development. I know, and I'm thinking back to when previous council, probably almost 10 years ago, was discussing the issue of secondary suites as they became a problem and the parking issues became a problem, and they were looking at making some revisions to that. And I know at that time, the property developers were quite clear that as they'd budgeted and done the economic, the business case for these developments, that was contingent upon a certain density consideration. So how would reducing the height requirements from 16 back down to, I guess, 11 is what we're mandated to do. Are we going to effectively make this a no-go development in doing so?
Yeah, through your worship, I mean, that's a question the developer would have to answer, and I'm sure they would say yes, that it would make it unfeasible, but that would probably be a normal response.
Yeah.
I do know that Devin and his team have been working with them, parking and all those issues that come with the higher density on smaller areas and all that. And my understanding is through this is that they did work on kind of coming to a solution on parking, because that was a big issue. Mm-hmm. And that's part of why you'll see in the initial report that came back in August that staff had recommended moving forward to today's public hearing. But you can see in that that's on the screen there, their first phase is definitely they're looking at some higher density townhouses with suites in that darker top left area. Mm-hmm. The yellow single family, and then below that you've got multifamily in the brown, and the gray, which is possible seniors or / employee residents type of housing. So, if all fully built out, there'd be some significant density in this area. And the townhouses, they need the height to achieve that density. And that's why they're asking for that. As far as the economics, only they can really answer that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I appreciate it would be a pretty jarring change for the people who've lived in those neighborhoods for a time, but, if you look at the current map of the city boundaries, we're, at a certain point we are going to have to look at building upwards instead of outwards. So, I mean, I think downtown infill makes the most sense as far as addressing that, but new developments as well are something we need to be mindful of as we look at that.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. I guess I just had, I guess if we had these concepts earlier, and I apologize for not bringing this up earlier before then, but to me it would make sense, like now hearing from that resident, it, just makes me aware of, these complexes. And then you look at this one, how those like where they're going to do that development in that corner, like the two to the east that are facing those houses, I mean, that's taking up 4 city lots for 2 buildings. So those would be pretty significant housing units that are going to be 3 stories high. So my thoughts are is I don't know if there's a way to go back and work with them and move that down so that they can be transparent and, put that in the brown section where they want to do the multifamily. But, like Councillor Parslow said, and like I heard from that resident, like I don't know if I'd want that right in my backyard either, right? Where if you moved it down a little bit, like at least you're giving fair warning to the next individuals that have, multi or single family homes there, that this is going to be built there. So you are aware of that but prior to, but yeah.
Yep, through your worship, there's always the opportunity to take those things back to the developer, the concerns, and see if they can come up with something. I mean, that's the point of the public hearing, is to bring these things forward, and if there is some issues that need to be worked out, is you take those back before we move any further.
Okay. And then just because this is kind of new for me going through the public hearing process, so if there is, that is a direction council would like, is that something that we need to make a recommendation, or is it?
Through your worship, if you would like staff to amend second reading to include a lesser the lesser amount of stories, staff can do that and bring back a report for an amendment of second reading, and then we would have another public hearing with the new information.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Well, I really concur with your sentiments. I can't see why I mean, and given what Councillor Earl has said, which is an important reflection, I'm concerned about the existing homeowners, and you're significantly changing the environment for them. If you move that further south, I could possibly support that, because the immediacy of it's not there, and their view would not be completely screwed up by this. But the other factor is that 116th Avenue. I'm looking at safety here and traffic flow. I drive that 17th Street Road in that area half a dozen times a day, probably. It's a very awkward crossing. That's the existing one. And is the road for that three-story buildings, right? Is that, I can only describe it, it seems like it comes out south of the green, right? Color.
I'm thinking right here. It does.
Just there.
Parslow, right there.
That's
117th that comes in as a cul-de-sac.
Oh, so that goes east.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I would assume that would be parking, and then that would all be.
Is that the right interpretation, that the traffic exiting that complex goes east?
That's correct. Through your worship, it's shown as a cul-de-sac right now.
Yes.
I know our team and the developer are working with Ministry of Transportation on a traffic impact study for this. And so 17th Street South is essentially, well, it's 219. It's ministry jurisdiction. So they're going to have, final say on where any connections to that road will occur. And also the dangerous goods route, or, all those things. So they have a say in it. So as it sits right now, everything would move out to the east and to the north out to 116.
Yeah.
This is a little off topic here, but is there future plans on 116th Avenue? I'm just talking about the public safety and stuff, to put like a trail in or sidewalk. Is that in the? No. Okay.
So through your worship, nothing in the immediate, although great candidate for it because of its width. It's got that access road on the south, so there is space to possibly look at doing something there.
And wide with the bike trail. Yeah. Okay. Definitely. I mean, exciting to see this for our community, and some development, and definitely I don't want to discourage any kind of development, but I do think that we need to look at that. So I don't know if there's somebody willing to put a motion forward.
So through your worship, just based on what I'm hearing, and might help with one of you to put a motion together, is I think what you're wanting to see some sort of transition on the height on that piece of the development that abuts the existing homes.
Yes.
So it's not that immediate from a single family to a three-story right there, that there's maybe a transition for a period of time before it gets up to the three-story there. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, I think that's what my understanding is. And then maybe from, where they got the orange, the three-story, that maybe the next one south of that could be that. But because that way they could disclose that to those individuals as they build that out, that there's going to be 3 stories. Or they can start the 3 stories back there, right? So I think is that the understanding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but Tab had some special wording that it needs to be worded. So what Kevin said, but how do we, is it just as a matter of saying that we're,
Through your worship, that council authorized staff to bring back a report that includes information regarding transitioning the zoning amendment bylaw to allow for sight lines for the existing homes.
what Tab?
Very well done.
What Tab said. Who would like to make that motion?
I'd like to make.
Councillor McDonald will make that motion, and second, Councillor Sudnick.
Do you mind repeating it, Ted?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Has anybody told you lately how amazing you are? Thank you. All right, I will call this motion to vote.
She's always nice to me as well, not like you.
I'm nice, Dave. Are you going to vote, or are you
I
going
did.
to speak?
No, you just asked to speak.
Yeah.
Enter the meeting
I've entered it several times.
and vote.
Thank you.
I know this is a new procedure, Councillor Parslow, but the vote is closed,
Gotta get
and
you
it's
back going.
carried. All right, now because of that, Tab, do I continue through the agenda? So, all right, next order is 3 correspondence and delegations. Don't believe we have any. And next, 4, I'll call 3 times for comments. So calling once for any comments. Twice for any comments. And 3 times for any comments. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.